Well, I wanted to say, if I had to say something to the young lawyers or the people getting out, most of the attorneys in Arizona are really nice people, and they are love to be asked for advice and consulted. And I would say you could call up on the phone to almost anyone and say, I've got a problem. You know, what can I do? What is your recommendation? Whatever it is. Certainly, you shouldn't be afraid to do that. I mean, in that way, Arizona's like a small town. And I think that you could call anyone from, you know, Tom Chandler down to, you know, anyone else that is in the phone book, and they would be willing to talk to you and say, you know, what can I do for you? How can I help you? And give you good advice, and that's one thing I think that is very important. They should realize that not to be afraid to call someone and to ask. It's certainly, I mean, you certainly would do that in your own private life. I mean, you're not going to just, if you go to the bank, you're not just going to, try to write a check on a paper bag and say, how should I do this, or what should I do with that? I don't know why you don't do it in the law profession.
Okay, so how do you do that? You don't know the person, but you know, I mean, what do you do?
For instance, if you are, first of all, depending upon if you're a woman, you may look under the AWLA group. You might call the president of Arizona Women Lawyers, one of the secretary, the secretary for AWLA, or one of these people. If you are a black lawyer, you may want to call the Hazel B. Daniels Association and someone from that. I mean, if that makes you feel easier to have someone that, you know, you have some relationship with because of either your ethnic background or whatever else. If that's not the case, if you're a young lawyer, you could call one of the young lawyers. They're listed, the young lawyer board or whatever is listed in the bar directory. That would be one way to go about it. Another way to go about it is just to call. I mean, myself, I would just call people that I've heard about, because I don't know of anyone. For instance, Sally Simmons, myself, Roxy Bacon, Bob Van Wyck, who was the past president of the state bar, who's in Flagstaff. I can't think of any place or anyone that would not be willing to say and talk to you about something and answer questions. Even the judges, I think, would be willing to talk to you, as long as they're not talking about a case that's in front of them.
Okay, so you dial their phone number, and what do you say when they get on the phone?
Well, I just had that happen about 6 months ago. Someone called up and said, you know, I need to talk to you about a case. I know that you don't even know me. Can you do this? And I said, certainly. And so just that, you call up to the secretary, and the secretary, let's say the secretary is going to say, well, who are you? And you just say, I'm Dee-Dee Samet, and he doesn't know me, but I'm a lawyer here in town, and I have this problem that I want to ask his advice or a question about. I don't know of anyone that is not going to put you through, or not going to say, well, we'll have him call you back. And I think that's how you start. And then when you talk to them, you say, you know, I know this may be forward of me, but I've heard that you really are knowledgeable in this area, or you've been around Arizona for such a long time and have such respect, and I have this problem that I'd really like to try to have some advice on. Do you think you could have spare 5 minutes of your time? If you're too busy now, I can call back whenever it's convenient.
And then how do you, when you have the problem, how do you explain it to them? I mean...
Well, it depends on what the problem is. If it's about a client or a case, you just tell them that here's the facts. If it is about a problem you have with another lawyer or whatever else, you don't have to mention names. You can just say, you know, I really don't want to mention the name, but this, you know, I went into court, and after court, this lawyer, you know, was so abusive to me and said all these terrible things, and I don't know how to handle it. I just don't know whether I should tell the judge. I don't know whether I should call the lawyer up and say, you know, you shouldn't do it, whether I should put something in writing, whether I should report it to the bar. I just don't know what to do. What should I do? Or, you know, depending on what the circumstances are.
Could you?
Or I went into court and I made this really flubbed up. I did this terrible thing, and I forgot to ask this question, or I forgot to file this motion or whatever else, what steps do I have to take? And, you know, the person may say, well, notify your malpractice insurance carrier and do thus and so, and try to call your client and, you know, say, here's what's happened, here's what I'm going to try to do. Call the other attorney and say, look, you know, here's what happened. It's not it's not going to affect the case. Would you agree to let me do this and so?
Could you contact one of the people on the committee that is that specialty from the bar? If you had, is that a way to
Certainly,
do it?
certainly. I get calls all the time about workers' compensation or about domestic issues, because I sit as a judge pro tem doing settlements. I get calls all the time from people that just want advice or to ask me a question about things. And, you know, and a lot of times I'll say, well, I don't know the answer, or I might say, well, here's one side of the coin, here's the other side of the coin, depending upon what you do here, here's what I might do in your place. Depends on what the question is. Or I might say, I can't give you legal advice, but here's what I would do about the issue.
All right, here's another question. Then we can done. This is one that you're a young lawyer and you know nobody, and suddenly people, like, you're in a grocery store or you're somewhere and people ask you advice, or they ask you for reference for another attorney, like I want a divorce. What do you do?
Well, first of all, I am very careful about recommending attorneys. I always recommend at least 3. You have to be careful, because I don't want someone saying and suing me for malpractice because I recommended somebody who didn't do what they wanted to do. So I always, and when we send our letters, we say you can consult the Yellow Pages, you can call the Pima County Bar Lawyers Referral, and here is a list of attorneys that do this type of work. So I think you have to be careful with that, especially, at least I do. Now, some people refer, that's where they get referrals, and they refer to other people just directly, and you may want to do that. If I got met in the grocery store with someone who asked a question or advice, I would just, you know, depending upon what the issue is, I would just say, well, you know, it sounds like a terrible problem and whatever else, and if you want to come and see me in my office, why don't you call my secretary up and make an appointment? I'll be glad to talk to you about it. Or you could say, this really isn't my field. I don't know what to do, but I can tell you this much. I think you need to consult with an attorney, and I would see about this and do thus and so, and call this person. I mean, there's several answers that you can give. If it's a good friend, I have given advice to good friends and say, here's what I think you should do about this and thus and so with that. But you have to be careful, you know, but I'm just telling you as a friend, but you have to be careful, because I think that if you gave them the wrong advice, they could sue you for malpractice, and you don't want that to happen.
And then just one more follow-up. It always seems like when people ask those kind of questions, they don't want to spend a lot of money. That there's a sense of, like, I got this little problem and I just want it fixed. And
these little problems never are little. The worst problems are those little problems that all you have to do is make a phone call. And then 2 years later and 100 hours later, you finally are making that final phone call. So it's never that simple. If they don't have a lot of money, first of all, there is a sliding fee scale that the Pima County Bar has. There's volunteer lawyers, there's legal aid. Yeah, it depends on what the question is. It's really hard to know. If they're calling you up for a simple question like, you know, this creditor, they're giving me a lot of hassle and they keep calling me at work and all, then I might, you know, I would give them, I'd say, well, you can call, there's a consumer group to say that they shouldn't be doing that, and so you need to talk to them about that, and you need to, you know, see about that. And sometimes, depending upon who it is, I'll say if they want it, because sometimes a call from a lawyer will help. And I have done those calls, you know, it does. Or I can't get my insurance company to pay or refund this money to me or pay this bill. And sometimes all it takes is a phone call. And yes, I have done that. And I think everybody does some of those. Yeah, I have to be careful, though, as a young lawyer, because pretty soon your whole day is filled up with doing those things. And you can get overloaded with it. The hardest thing to learn as a young lawyer is to say no. No to a client, no to someone who comes into your office. because I mean, I had a terrible time. Somebody had to come and say, I tried and I can't get an attorney to represent me, but here's the problem. And then I would feel so bad because the problem was something that was egregious and I wanted to do something about it, and I would get involved with it. I try to pick and choose now. My office has told me we should be the ones that should be screening your cases because it's very, the way you get involved in these cases, and some of these cases, the costs can be pretty outrageous that you get involved with, that you're extending on behalf of your client, that you try to recover from your client, but sometimes your client can't pay you. So that's, to me, one of the hardest things is to learn when to say no and to evaluate and find out and know when a case is bad or is snake bit or that the client is going to be somebody that's going to turn on you. Those are things that, again, you can't learn in law school, and no matter what kind of course you have, you're still not going to learn it in law school. It only comes from practical experience.
Well, this is great. Do you have anything else you want before we?
Nothing that I can see. If I saw your list, I might think of something, but I can't. I can't really think of anything else except that if as a law student, you're not afraid to admit when you don't know anything, you'll probably get a lot farther off in the legal field and in life, because that way it's a lot better than doing something that you're doing wrong.
Well, that's good. That's good advice. Thank you so much.
Great.